What we're going to try to do is cover how to effectively manage data to understand the customer journey. So there's data everywhere. Who cares? Unless you use it to motivate a person to do something. Preferably in our case, sign up for an event and spend some money. The future role of data utilization in events marketing, we're going to talk a lot about that because there's a lot of data in this building right now. We're going to talk about how we might utilize that and access that. And basically then how to sell more tickets, make smarter decisions, and run better events, because that's why we're here. It's all happening, and to bring it to life to you, for you guys, are the three panelists. I'm going to read the CV bit, and then I'm going to ask them what they actually do for a living. So we'll do that. Okay, first and foremost, Jalpa McMillan. There you go. Now, this is what she says, or she's supposed to say. Jalpa is a senior manager within PwC's Customer Experience and Insights team. She specializes in understanding human motivations through the behavioral, experiential, and operational data available to organizations. She's passionate about innovation and delivering strategic research outcomes that drive culture, change, and business decisions. That sounds terrific. Jalpa, what do you really do?
So essentially what I do is work out how to ask people the right questions to get the right data from them to help businesses make decisions. So for example, you want to know what's going to motivate your people to come to this event. You ask the questions in the right way rather than just the obvious, why are you going to come to this event? And so that you can turn that into something that's actionable to drive the decisions.
Cool. Okay. Next guy, Louie Keating in the blue shirt. Louie is the founder and principal consultant of White Box Analytics. With over 17 years of data and analytical experience within the marketing agencies in Sydney and London, Louie has experience managing analytical teams, creating data strategies, as well as being hands-on with the building of segmentations, predictive models, database builds, and creating dashboards and visualizations so people can understand what this stuff is. So Louie, tell me, what do you do on a daily basis?
That's pretty much it. So as you can tell, I'm proper geeky. I've been a data analyst all my life. I mean, at the moment, it's really helping people solve problems with the medium of data. And it's finding a way to use that data, usually in a marketing sense. So how do you communicate to the right people? How do you talk to them at the right time? And how can you, I guess, get a return on investment for the data you've actually got? And we work with lots of different companies, lots of different clients. Some are very, very analytical minded, and some really don't have a clue about what data is used for. And yeah, I'm happy to help all of them.
Of course. Cool. And last but not least, Brad Molt, Head of Strategic Partnerships at Data Republic. Brad is Head of Strategic Partnerships at a leading data sharing technology company, Data Republic. Joining in 2015 as a founding member, Brad leads the implementation of strategic data initiatives between Australia's leading banks, airlines, media firms, and partner consultancies, driving data sharing transformation programs within Data Republic's major clients. He's had an extensive career working at the intersection of data, strategy, technology, and media, and has held roles previously at PAC Micro Marketing and Experience Marketing Services. My name is Jeff Sand. Oh, before I go, so what do you really do?
Jeff, what I'm mostly doing is looking after our big clients, helping them to get the most out of data sharing and the application of data to their business problems. And the framework that we have is all about data sharing. So we help clients to sidle up to other big organizations and exchange data.
Terrific. My name is Jeff Sanders. I'm CEO of Beyond Analysis. And my data, I'm very happy you're all here today because I had to put my suit on for the first time in about 3 years. And my data is I've actually lost some weight. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming to know that, hey, this is all happening. This is quite good. So this is the part of the show where, because originally it's all about showtime, this is the part of the show where I walk over and it's the opportunity for my new LinkedIn shot where I sit down and look like I'm having a good conversation with a couple people I've never met. So what we're going to do is do this part and try to bring us back to what we're actually talking about today. One of the interesting things things before I jump down and do this other shot where I can put on the other pictures. Looks like I'm happening as a business guy. The app. So we're going to talk, the first question I'm going to ask is, what kind of data is happening right here? As you saw, if you have downloaded the app, which I recommend you all do, because then you can do all kinds of interesting social media stuff and blah, blah, blah. But what they capture just this morning, email, phone, a picture, or if my avatar, so I can put a monkey on it or something, my profile, if I choose to do so, the title, my business, my Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Google+. Now that's all happened in the last 3 hours. I guess my question to you guys, just kicking it off, that's just off the app. What other kinds of data could we be capturing here? And then I guess what I'm going to ask, how should we or could we be using it or inspiring people to get more into it? So just maybe Brad, kick off on that?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a really good point that you make, Jeff, about all the systems that are out there now that drive all the things you need to get done at an event like this. Many of them are capturing data in quite considerable detail. They give us hints about what we might do better next time. Sometimes that information, if it's deployed back to some sort of reporting where we can get our hands on it, helps us to make decisions about what's going on at the actual event itself. And the range of systems that are involved can be enormous. So if you think about the systems that are deployed by the event organiser, by the venue itself, so the hotel in this case, possibly by a whole bunch of other people who have interest in the effective running of events in Sydney, like the City of Sydney and the New South Wales government and so on. There's a whole bunch of data being created and collected for all sorts of different purposes, and it's really good to go to think about that data in terms of your purposes, because that'll help you direct where you might like to explore access to some of that data and some of those systems.
Cool. This is working, isn't it? Okay, cool. I get loud. Not as loud as the other American, because she was quite loud, but I'm going to be almost as loud. May not as positive, maybe a bit more sarcastic, but I'll be loud. Louie, you had a chat with one of the people that actually runs the events last night about the kind of data that's captured and how they use it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. And they were quite honest and said, as an industry, not very good at collecting and using the data, but then went on to tell me what they were collecting and using, and I actually thought, yeah, that seems quite reasonable. So I guess if you look from the very start, you've got your acquisition. So how are you trying to acquire those customers, apart from doing above-the-line TV kind of advertisement? You're really going to, I guess, approach digital. So you'll be using your social media kind of channels, so Facebook, LinkedIn, to profile and understand which kind of customers do you want to come to your event. You kind of have to have an idea about the sort of people you're going for, and that can be gut feel, but really moves to the next stage of when people are registered. You provide quite a lot of information about yourself, about things you're interested in, the industry you work in. So that profiling becomes key for all types of other clients I work with as well. Understanding the type of customers that you have, also potentially understanding the sort of customers that you're not attracting is also another way of thinking about, well, how do we reach more of those people? And obviously, like as Jeff said, there's an app today. I think it's actually just a web-based app. You can get ones that you can download, which can allow you to push notifications to people to make sure in the right place, or if they want to meet up between the events. So all of those different data points are obviously good to capture. Using them is, I guess, the hardest thing. They end up being in siloed areas, and you have to try and think, actually, how do we bring them together to use?
Cool. One of the things I'm kind of interested in is, out of all the data points that are available here, or even at bigger events where you've got beacons and you can track somebody through where are they going, which event are they going to, Did they buy anything? Where did they go to lunch? You've got your how do I get as many people as possible to this event, preferably the right kind of people, and then you capture that stuff while they're there. I guess, Jalpa, one of the things I'm quite interested in is what's the best stuff to, what are the best data points to use, and what should you be focusing on? I guess first from, I guess, an acquisition point of view, getting people to the event, are you using stuff from previous learnings? And then while you're there, what are the interesting things to, I guess, make the event more relevant and newsworthy within the overall context?
It's a good question. I think there's a few elements to this. One is, how do you get the right people to the event and work out what they want from that event? And the other is when they're at the event. So you can capture attendance. I know someone was scanning this as I walked in, so they know how many people are in the room. And that's one, I guess, measure of how engaged people are in what you're presenting. The other is, how effective has it been in getting that message across? So are you going to walk out of this room saying, I learned something new? Is that, I guess it goes back to, is that the purpose of this panel? And there's different ways of doing that. All the technology really helps you to have different avenues for doing that. So there's really cool stuff out there that will, your app today, you've registered, you've come in here, you've walked into the door, they could trigger a little survey as you walk out this room. How was that session? Did you learn something new? Will you go and tell someone about what you learned today? And that, for the event organisers, is an indication that what they've put in front of you today has been effective, and that'll give them an idea next time of the types of topics that people are interested in. And if you're doing it in a broader space than this, there's also methods where you can trigger little surveys or get insights from people on the spot, in the location, just by tracking where they are. So you can say, as soon as someone enters this room or this area, trigger this survey and ask them while they're there what they think. And you can even have conversations with them. Then there's all the social media as well, what people are going to be saying about your event and how they're tagging you. So that's how you evaluate whether what you're putting in front of people is effective. I'm not sure that we do it very well yet because the technology is new and evolving and it's just getting out there. In terms of understanding what people want from your event and what's going to make them walk away from your event saying wow, and sharing it with their friends, with their colleagues, on social media, it goes back to when you've identified your audience, as Louie said. How can you get to those people's mindsets? What other data do you know about them? So have we got their social media feeds? Do we have their LinkedIn profiles to work out what industries they're in, what they're talking about, what the topics of conversation are that they're interested in? Also things like what news sites have they signed up for, what's in their news feeds? All of that data is available to us. But there's also other ways of doing it, so directly asking them. If we've got their email address, let's send them a little quick survey, ask them the right questions, prioritise what's going to be interesting and important to people. And that'll also help you work out what your return is going to be. So why do you want people to come to your event? Do you want them to learn something new? Is it about building a brand? Is it just about fun and excitement? So you have to work out what that is and then how that's going to play out on the event on the day.
Cool. I'm also interested in and hopefully you guys are too. If you're not, so start coughing and doing things like that. It's when you capture the data, you know the person who signed up for whatever reason. Just imagine we're starting from scratch with this event. We capture all this stuff. We have your information. I'm assuming we're then going to go back out to you and go, hope you had a great time. Looking forward to seeing you next year. Hey, why don't you tell your friends because it was so awesome. And then what? So you're still stuck with the same market. Are there, and maybe this is for you, Brad, in terms of data append. I know you guys, and I can start to profile a little bit about the type of person that may want to come to the event, because I want to make sure you come back next year because it'll be cheaper for me to market to you. How do I find more people like you? Hopefully you'll tell me some of those things because you'll link in and do that type of stuff. But beyond that, what can I do to expand my market to drag more people in? So if I clearly want a bigger event or a more popular event, what can I do? And I know there's, you at your place, you start to do data append and enrichment. How does that work? And at what point do I go to prison? Yeah.
Thanks for that notion, Jeff.
Especially the prison part. I'm more interested about the prison part. But yeah.
So people in the audience who have anything to do with the marketing function will know that you can often expand audiences using the technologies of people like Facebook. So if you've got people who have attended your event or have enrolled or expressed interest in you, then of course you can fold that back through Facebook's lookalike type functions and end up with a bigger audience. So that's one technique in the digital sphere. Another technique that we like to think is just that little bit more democratic is that rather than all the data coming in and out of Facebook, another way of doing it is to actually work out what partners do I want to work with on this. So if you think about your event, there'll be a whole bunch of different partners who have data capture going on as well. They may not be in a position to transfer their information about visitors straight to you, but you may well be able to use that data appropriately for things like profiling and building a better model of who your audiences could be based on that deeper insight of the data that's been captured by a partner. So a good example might be if my event is in perhaps a tourist destination but there's not a big population centre alongside it, then obvious partners will be how did my audience get here? Can I work with an airline to match data that they've captured to the data that I've got? And build out a much stronger or more detailed profile about the attributes of those people and their attitudes and behaviours and where they've come from and all those sorts of things. Does that?
Yeah, interesting. What about the prison part? I didn't get any of that.
Oh, sorry, Jeff, I missed the prison part. People love that bit, don't they? So
that's the kind of, at one point,
we're
I'm not supposed to be doing this, yeah.
Yeah, we're very lucky in Australia that we have appropriate regulation to manage people's privacy. It's particularly effective in the consumer space. And to Jeff's point, that one of the things you don't want to do is, without the consent of the consumer, be passing lists from one organisation to another. So that's the core framework of complying and making sure you stay out of court, is to think about consent. Do you have consent to do this before you actually provide that data to anybody else? And are insights possible? In other words, some of that profiling activity that I mentioned that doesn't necessarily have to be involving an extract or a supply of data at an individual level, can often be just as powerful for future audience creation and insights that you need to make a decision next year.
Yeah, cool. Jalpa, one of the questions that we spoke about earlier is, how can you use offer that insight when you start to compare the other data points and put them together? How do you ensure you're actually delivering the best event experience to your attendees? Is it because that seems to be beyond the data matching bit of acquisition. How does that then translate into, well, now that I've got them on board, how do I use the insights to make the experience better?
So I guess one of the ways is what I spoke about before, capture those insights when they're in the room, in the moment, because that's the best time that they're going to give you the feedback that you need. If you ask it too late, people change things in their minds and their experiences based on what they've heard around them. So capture it in the moment. So use a lot of the technologies that you've got available, the apps that you've got, or using the geolocation to trigger little surveys. How did you find that? And if you get a bad rating, so why did you say that? They give that feedback. That gives you information on what happens next at your next event, what you need to fix, what worked well. But in terms of how to make the event the best it can be for the people that are coming, it's using the data to understand who's coming to your event and what their expectations are. So even as someone registers for the event, asking them, sending them an email saying, thanks for your registration, what are you most interested in? Giving them a list of things you're thinking about putting on at the event, and then getting them to rate it and you can see who wants what. So actually just directly asking the people is really, really valuable in terms of working out on the day how to prepare the logistics, what events, what topics to put on. And then you can use that along with other data sources to say, what are the logistics going to be like? What's the traffic going to be like around my area based on, information from transport authorities or the venue, etc.
That sounds like a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets to the point, the Invictus Games guy, I can't remember his name, that was great. He mentioned, he had a bit of a slide about how it all works together and said, we've got so much data and we don't use any of it, or we don't use enough of it. And it's a really interesting point where we've all got clients and we work in this business and everybody wants everything. They go, yeah, I get all this data, I got all this kind of stuff. And part of it is, well, yeah, we can get it, but what are you going to do with it? Because it's not the easiest thing to do. More often than not, when you do it properly, you get little quick wins that could be quite profitable and do the job for you. But one of the things, because it was interesting when he mentioned that, it was interesting because we were in the back room going, no one's talking about data. This is bad. It was the first time in the morning somebody mentioned data. And the fact that there are so many data points, as Brad said, from hotels, airlines, partnerships, sponsors, just the individual people that are signing up. There's a whole lot of stuff. And one of the challenges is, how do you know what's important? And how do you harness it? And then how do you go about then kind of getting it out there to action it? And I'm going to put you on the spot, Louie, a little bit, because you asked, with so much data available, what are the fundamental steps for using it? Assuming we can grab all these data points, what do you do? And then I guess one of the questions to you guys, as trying to make this interactive, because nothing's showing up on our little monitor here, so clearly you don't have the app or whatever, but I just go to you guys. Who in your organizations as event people, business people, who owns your data, who's responsible for it, and who actions it? Because it's clearly a big opportunity, primarily because there's so many events. So how do you differentiate yourselves? I know I'm going off piste here a little bit, so I'll come back to the question. So, sorry, I drank too much coffee, and it's all coming to fore at the moment. So I'm going to go back to, with all this stuff available, how do you get it going?
Okay.
What are the fundamental steps?
Okay, so given what I understand of the events industry, in terms of the organisers here saying, okay, we don't use it enough, I think, first of all, it can be overwhelming. You're not alone in that. If you think, okay, we've got a lot of data, we're not too sure what to do with it. Most clients we work with have that problem. We're collecting data in so many new ways. There's new apps, there's new things coming out, and straight away they're generating data, and it's off over here. So first of all, don't be overwhelmed by that. I guess the fundamental step is to probably do what we probably call like a data audit, a data review. Try and understand, and from your organisation, what data sets you have. What you don't want is for your IT team to give you a data schema, because that will really probably confuse things. I actually saw a great one from a client yesterday, and it was a really nice visual bubble chart, and each bubble represented a data source, so that could be your website, your customers, your complaints, your surveys, and off each of those big bubbles was small little bubbles that showed all the data points that they're collecting. So it's collecting name and address and email address, and it was a really good kind of visual way that I think the whole organisation could understand what data they actually had, rather than it just being kept with the IT team or the data team. Because it's for a whole organisation to use. It shouldn't just be like one part of the organisation that's using it. So first of all, it's getting that point. Not getting too technical, but if you have got lots of data sets, it's the ideal scenario is having a unique identifier, something that you can connect those data sets.
That's the part where I'm going, what's that?
Okay, so something that makes it personal to yourself. So an email address, a phone number is pretty good, and in terms of what I've seen from like the registration process and the app, you are collecting those things. So that's a great way that at some point you can potentially connect those data sets together. And in terms of using them, keep things basic at first. Don't try and think, I need to use everything I've collected. Try and think about a bit of a plan of what you're doing now. Usually when you've got that data, you're either profiling people or you're trying to communicate with them to talk to them. So if you're trying to communicate to talk to them, you've got data around that can help you understand why they've given you their information and what they want to receive. For all of my kind of years of working with marketing departments, see too many companies, they over-communicate. They think, oh, we've got X amount of email addresses, we need to keep hitting them every week. Don't over-communicate. Think about relevance of what you're talking to them about and the timing. And I think especially for an event, there should be obviously a natural lead up to that event. And you want to talk to people about what they're interested in, maybe not too generic. So you want to, if they've said they're interested in a certain part of it, that's the part you want to kind of target. And two other points I make. One is the word segmentation, which again shouldn't be a scary thing. It just means that you're putting people into groups where they have a similar interest, so you can talk to them about something that they're interested in. The Holy Grail is trying to get to that one-to-one personalized communication, but don't really see that happen. So think about segments and how you can talk to people, and try and test things. Experiment. Do A/B testing. Try different subject lines and different content. It's all about learning. You can never get things right straight away. You need to learn as you go and figure out what works and what data does work. And if that data was great, can we get more of that data?
Can I just add that's a very data-driven
Yes.
answer. But for people who don't use data, and I've worked with a lot of people who don't use data, don't know what they want to know from it, and they don't understand what data sets are available, I find the easiest way to do that is to get them to ask themselves what they want to know, regardless of what data is out there and what's available. What's the question you want to answer? And then find out who can answer that question for you using the data sets that they've got available. And sometimes it might be we can't answer that question, but if you don't know what you want to know from the data, it's not going to be easy to find out what data set you need to look at. Because if you've got a data set, you as someone who works with data, you know how to get the insights out of it because you know what questions to ask of it. But sometimes I find it's easier just to start from the beginning. What do you want to know? And then find the data that will answer that question.
Cool. Hey, we're going to enter the modern world because we've got a couple questions here on the magic screen. The first one is, how does the GDPR in the EU impact the way we use event data for international events? Does anyone know the answer to that question? Brad?
Thanks, Jeff. I'm no lawyer, not even a bush lawyer, but that's a question that absolutely should be asked, and it should be something that you take to the legal department in your organisation. Some of the big clients that we work have active programs, even though they're Australian companies, have active programs for compliance with the GDPR. Importantly, it only applies to European citizens, but it's meant to be global in terms of the impact of protecting those European citizens. So if you've got Europeans on your database, then yes, you do need to consider GDPR and whether your systems enable you to be compliant with some of the provisions of GDPR, like the right to be forgotten and other things like that.
Cool. Next question is, how long can you keep a client's data for? In brackets, without going to prison. Clearly, I'm concerned with this. Okay, but how long? Forever? Is that an access point? Do you have to opt in? When you opt in, is there a statute of limitations? Is this forever, ever, amen, until I opt out, or how does it work?
No, like a lot of things in law, the word reasonable comes into play. Yeah. If it's transactional data and you've had a transaction with that person, then obviously your transactional systems are going to keep that indefinitely. But if you go to use the data on an individual, so as they to reach out with a new campaign to speak to those people, then that must be in line with that person's expectations. And if you haven't agreed or you haven't got a specific consent from that person, then obviously the word reasonable comes into play, and it might not be reasonable to expect that I'd be contacted a year later with another campaign.
Yeah, cool. And I guess there's a point where the data just may not be clean anymore and just out of date, and everybody moves, they change their name, they move off. Cool. Thank you. Third question, how easy is it to segment age databases, and is it possible to clean data while validating it? I'll read that one again. You ready? How easy is it data or data? I do both.
Data.
Data? Okay, cool.
If you're English.
I'm just we're working both sides. Okay. How easy is it to segment age databases, and is it possible to clean data while validating it? Over to you tech guys.
Yeah, look, I'm assuming an age database. Is that talking old, or is that talking? Yeah. Look, in terms of segmenting a database, you should be able to always do that. There's for a data analyst, there's always going to be variables in there that you can use, and I'm going potentially too technical there, but there's always elements that are describing the person in there that you can use to segment. In terms of cleaning it while validating it, to be fair, there's a lot of pieces of software now that are quite good at cleaning, and I assume they were potentially talking about it could be like address cleaning or even email validation, and there's a lot of services that are pretty cheap that you can use to do those sort of things, and it's always worth doing that, especially if you're about to email a large campaign of trying to validate that those email addresses you can send to. Otherwise, you'll find that your email server could be, I think, shut down or it has to be warmed up. So yeah, look, it's all possible, and technology these days is making it a lot more approachable to be able to do in a cheaper way.
Cool. One of the things I want to get back to, Jalpa, is about targeting and the customer. Because again, all the data in the world, you can organize it, get it into streams, get it into actionable bits. What do you do with it? I guess my question to you is, how can you use that data to target your potential audiences, and what data is available to do this? Kind of keeping it kind of from a marketing perspective, from a customer perspective, to motivate them to do something, because that's the output of this.
Yeah. So I guess that's what data is available depends on like your event and who you're looking at, and it's probably something that you guys can answer more. But how do you, sorry, what was the first part of your question? Targeting?
Where are we? How can you use data to target your potential audiences? What data is available to us?
Right, so it goes back, I think someone mentioned here before, if you're looking at social media feeds, for example, you segment that, you work out which target populations. Is it based on where they live? Is it based on certain profiles, certain segments? You can push out to them, get awareness up, and then it comes down to marketing very much. Are we getting the communication strategy right to get the news out there that your event is happening, when it's happening, and then are we hitting the right people? Are they seeing your communications? And then are we making it easy for them to come to your event? So are we making the tickets available if it's a ticketed event? Are we making it easy for them to register and to attend? Are we having it in the locations where your audiences are? So if you're having, I don't know, an event in Sydney where most of your target population is based in Dubbo, that doesn't make sense. So really segmenting your audience, understanding who you need to invite and who is going to give you the biggest return on that investment. So if you're going to spend money for, I don't know, a youth music festival and have it in Wagga Wagga when most of the youth live in Surrey Hills, that sort of, so demographic profiling of data sets that's available from the ABS, for example, will tell you where those population pockets are that you need to target. You've got Facebook and social media to do those marketing campaigns to target those specific populations. Does anyone have any examples or any questions that maybe I could make it more relevant?
Not right now?
Ask it through the app.
You ask through the app. Hey, I'm going to ask a question about ROI, because it kind of comes down to that. I mean, you run an event to, I'm assuming, make some money at some point, certainly get or drag in customers. It can be a cost or to your business because you're going, I need to invest in this because I'm going to run an event to bring in vendors and to sell product and do that kind of stuff, or the more kind of classic stuff like concerts and, you know, car races and surfing competitions and all that kind of stuff. How can you use data to show the effectiveness of your event in delivering on its purpose? So how can you measure ROI? I mean, broadly speaking, because it's going to come down to that. Every data guy wants you to do something with the data because, you know, because then at least you can test it. And then you can have a benchmark to start to judge, was it effective? What could I change? Hopefully I won. You know, everybody goes, hey, it's good to test and learn. You go, yeah, you kind of want to win on that stuff rather than, hey, I lost a lot of stuff, lost a lot of money, but I learned some things. Yeah, good, see you, you're out. So in terms of the ROI question, getting back, you know, how can you measure ROI? I mean, what are the points, what would be the basis on that? Brad?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. This is what all our clients that we work with, certainly, that's what they're all about. They want to know what the return was from their marketing campaign to get more people to an event. They want to know about the full picture of all the things that a visitor engaged with at the event. In other words, where was the yield? How much of that yield, as the organiser, was I securing, and how much were my partners securing? And then also what the economic impact is often a big concern depending on who the client that we're working with is. So often the tourism authorities and the people concerned with state economy and all that sort of thing will have a very broad perspective of ROI. And so they're desperate to get the data points together to actually measure that. So you might say as an event organiser, it's pretty straightforward. I know how much I spend, I know how much I put in the till, I can work out my ROI, but taking a slightly more broad perspective, if I'm a tourism authority, I don't necessarily have access to that data. I want an overall perspective on the economic impact of some of the activity that's taken place. And I might reach for an outside or a partner data source. So on our platform, at the risk of sounding like a plug, we have bank transaction data, so that's immensely powerful at indicating when someone was in an area, what they spent their money on while they were there, through the link to the card holder, where did I come from? And that then becomes a very powerful feed to complement any survey type data that might be going on to actually assess the event. And obviously one of the key things about survey data is it gives you more of the motivation, which is really good. So you can actually ask the questions about what made you do that and all that sort of thing. With Jalpa's help, of course, to get those questions right. But you also get from the card data a very different perspective, which is high volume. So some of Australia's banks have 25% share of card transactions or something like that, and therefore you get a huge representation of what's going on and the merchant categories that were spent on and how far people came from to your event. In other words, what is the overall economic impact?
Cool. We have a question here. What's on the horizon for data collection? What role will AI play? Nice low-key question. I'll say it again to give you another 5 seconds to consider the answer for that. What's on the horizon for data collection? What role will AI play? Louie?
Okay. Look, in the media, there's a lot of talk of the Internet of Things, which is, I guess, basically the amount of things that now can capture data that didn't used to be able to do that. Those things are, some of them very basic at the moment, but they are becoming more and more they're evolving in their own way. I feel like that for events could be quite an interesting way of collecting data, so people don't naturally know it's potentially happening. They may be interacting with, you know, in the breaks, there could be like a little breakout session, or sorry, not breakout session, but a little area where you're going to go and talk to some of the vendors, and you might be interacting with whatever they've got on there, and maybe it's like, it could be a game, or you could be whatever it is, and that's collecting data from you. Obviously, there will still need to be that consent part. In terms of like AI, it's obviously a very hot topic. It's something that lots of my clients they're interested in AI. They all want to be doing it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do it right away. It's something that we often go, okay, well, we'll try and get to that point, but actually we're working on more fundamental things first.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, from the first part of that question, what's on the horizon, that's very popular, so is data sharing. So kind of what you guys are doing at Data Republic seems to be more and more and more because people want to expand their market. And how do they do that and do that kind of thing? We've got a little bit of time left. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Ooh. Yes, question. Ooh.
I'm the Invictus guy.
The Invictus guy. Yeah, you were good.
Good man. Thank you very much. I wasn't quite sure which breakout group to come into, but this is clearly a good one.
Yeah, there you go. We love this guy.
I suppose it's a comment and it's a question. I think, as my experience suggests to me that there is an incredible opportunity around data and harnessing data, but the output of that harnessing is around integration. The challenge in any event is about how you bring lots of people on late and you ensure everybody is doing things together so that you don't waste time, you don't double handle information, you are accurate where you need to be accurate. Yeah. And the challenge of doing that in these stovepipe fragmented events is that you make mistakes, you lose information, you don't get the right information into the proposal for tender. So therefore you're not getting enough chairs, you're not getting enough loos and things like that. So I think for me the opportunity is about how do you bring on board a data approach, a data-driven approach, a data architecture, so that from the very outset you're designing in the data points and your team is working on those data points so that rather than you coming to me and saying, what do you need to know, actually you're coming to me and saying, here's what you need to provide, so that we're giving you the information that you need, so that the data architecture is being populated, connecting up customers with suppliers, with intents, with tenders, so that the whole thing comes together. That's the nirvana. That would save money, it would save time, it would reduce risk.
It's a great point. I feel there's, as far as I know, especially for the events industry, there's nothing out there at the moment that can do that. There's lots of companies who create very flash-looking software that look like they potentially can pull in lots of data sources and help with those things. I don't think we're at that point yet. There's a lot of veneer in front of that to make it look like it can do that. We're probably still, I think, a little way off from having the Nirvana solution. However, that doesn't mean that you can't start trying to plan. And I guess going back to my earlier point, it's thinking about, and the fundamental things that you want to try and do by collecting those data points. And if you've had some failings in the past, go, how can we stop that happening? I don't think you're going to have the complete solution straight away. So don't, I guess, over-plan and try and build the best solution that's going to do that.
I think the point is, what are the pain points that, if you try to do everything, nothing gets done. Unless you've got enough guys, you've got a gigantic organization. So I think the thing is, pick the pain points that you can actually fix, get those organized first, and then kind of move on from there. Because you do get so much stuff, it's overwhelming and nothing happens.
Hi.
Hopefully that answered some of your questions. Ish. Yeah, okay, there you go. I love this guy.
Hi, I'm Martin from First Emergency Couriers. We've got a business here in Australia and in the UK. We have no data whatsoever. I like the lady's comment that actually you need to know what the answer is before you ask the question. Does that have to be part of my marketing plan, or should I be looking for the information from the data before I then put my marketing plan together?
I think it should be part of your marketing plan. Because
Right.
if you're coming at it with a strategy and with an idea of what you want to achieve, then you can work out whether you can answer that question using data and how you can answer it. And it'll help you, I guess, identify how you're going to get to that end point where you've answered that question or achieved what you set out to achieve.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? Nothing here. I'm going to ask one of each of you because we have 3 minutes and 44 seconds. 1 second. Okay. You walk out of here today. We go, gee, those guys were terrific. Somebody walks up to you after this meeting and goes, hey, I'm in the events business. What do you think I should do? I've got some data. Well, what's the main thing I would do? What would you recommend to them? Sorry to put you on the spot. Yeah?
So I'll start.
You answer.
Because I'm from asking questions directly of people, so I definitely say the first thing you should, every time you have an event, is ask people afterwards what they thought of the event, whether they would come back, and a couple of questions to work out what was the best part of it. And I'm not talking about was the lighting good or was the aircon too cold, but what was one or two things that they took out of it, and then work out which of those were the most important for them on the day. So that you know next time what people's expectations are. You've set yourself a bar, and you can strive towards that next time.
Cool. What do you think, Louie?
I'm probably gonna. I might start repeating myself here, but yeah, look, I think there's like the basics of what you should be doing with data. It's interesting. I'd love to have a chat to you afterwards about you don't have any data. I don't really meet that many people who say, no, we haven't got any. Most people speak to, they have data. It's, okay, what have we, it'd be trying to help them understand how can we collect more data. And like, I'm a big advocate for trying to collect as much of it as possible. The more you have, the more opportunities. You don't have to use it all straight away. But look for data collection opportunities. The more of those you get, and the more times you can link those connections of data, as things evolve, you should be able to use that data in a better way.
Cool. Brad?
I'm going to be a bit controversial and sort of pick up on some of the themes coming from people in the audience, but I think the main message that I would send would be don't let technical people or data people run what you're trying to get done as a business. You should be setting the agenda and getting the technology to work for you. And I think that sort of helps sort out some of those issues about, do I start with the data? Do I start here or there? Do I start with a question? Do I start with an answer? Actually start with what the business needs to get done and what my business aim is, and then look at the data availability in that context and make sure that the people are with you, are part of the solution, not that, they're the custodian or I need technology to do this. In the companies that I go in and out of, the ones who are, I guess, going to make the best strides forward in the application of data, the ones who have that attitude, they refuse to accept that division or that technology specialisation or that data specialisation, and what they do is they draw everyone together around what the business is trying to get done. So I hope that helps.
Cool. Thank you all very much. Everyone, a big round of applause for Brad, Louie, and Jalpa. And on behalf of me and my new self-esteem for having lost a bunch of weight from this suit, I want to thank you very much and have a great afternoon. Cheers, guys.